On May 26, 2016, Sabah attacked Saima with a knife. So why would Sabah do this? Why would Sabah attack and murder her sister? Well, today's case, it has it all. It's all about lies, deceit, betrayal, obsession, and extreme jealousy. So what possessed Sabah to kill her older sister Saima? What happened in the Khan's family household? Well, today's case, we're gonna dive in, and it is just so disturbing. Sabah Khan was born in February 22nd, 1990. She was the youngest of two daughters. Her family moved from Pakistan to the Netherlands when Sabah was only just a child. The family moved again from the Netherlands to Luton, which is about 50 miles away from London, when Sabah was only 18 years old. So I'm not quite sure how Sabah felt about moving again, but it was a decision that the family made and she just went along with it. Sabah tried to study for a law degree, but she didn't finish. She didn't really have much of an attitude towards learning. So this is just a side note, but I realized if Sabah had her own independence and graduated university and everything, she would have been less dependent on her family. And this is imperative to the case that I'm gonna discuss with you guys. So keep that in mind. So Sabah's relationship with her sister was very close. Sabah and Saima were inseparable. They were living the same life. They were both working the same jobs. They were both carers and supporting the elderly. They would tell each other everything despite the 10-year age gap. You know, you wouldn't see Sabah without Saima and Saima without Sabah. So the pair were seen as, according to the local neighborhood, best of friends. Saima and Sabah were living the exact same life and they were okay with it. They were spending so much time together and everything seemed absolutely fine. Up until Saima had to marry a man called Hafiz in 2007. Now, I believe that this is an arranged marriage and Saima was okay with it. She listened to her parents. She was very obedient and very, she would do what her parents advised her to do, and she wasn't very defiant. So she agreed. Saima agreed to this arrangement. However, Saima didn't know Hafiz was a piece of work. He already started placing his charm on Sabah, Saima's younger sister. He would flirt with her. He would give her googly eyes. He would be very suggestive and give her the attention Sabah never had from the opposite sex. Sabah was only 18 years old and she didn't have experience. She never had a boyfriend, and this is the first man that approached her and started flirting with her. And Sabah was very much enjoying all of this attention. And before you know it, she fell in love with Hafiz, her sister's husband, very quickly. She just fell in love with him based on the attention he was giving her. And before we know it, the pair decided to have a sexual affair. Yes, Sabah was having an affair with her sister's husband. And this affair lasted a very long time, right under everyone's noses. So who was living in the house? It was Sabah, Saima, the two younger siblings, and their parents. So including Hafiz, 6 people all together in a semi-detached house, very small space. The home was overcrowded and an affair was happening and nobody catched on. As I said before, Sabah was very inexperienced when it comes to relationships, and she took whatever Hafiz said literally. She believed every word, and she honestly believed that he loved her, which wasn't true. He was just using her, he manipulated her, and it was for his own sexual gratification. Hafiz also took Sabah's virginity. This is why she became very attached to him, because she felt very impure if she married someone else in the near future and she has lost her virginity beforehand. So Sabah was very gullible and she just became obsessed with him before you know it. She started fantasizing about him. She was doing anything and everything to keep his attention, to win his affection. So in 2012, Sabah and Hafiz began their affair. They would sleep with each other as often as they could. Hafiz would text Sabah to come downstairs after everybody goes to work and the house was clear, and they would have sexual relations in the living room, in the master bedroom where Saima sleeps. She would go in there and they would rendezvous over there. Hafiz was a migrant from Pakistan, so he was working as a taxi driver. That means he was self-employed. So they would also have sexual relations in the back seat of the taxi. This isn't illegal, this is just immoral. So let's keep that in mind. But this is something out of a soap opera. Like, why would you sleep with your sister's husband? It is so disgusting. And it's the ultimate betrayal. This is very shocking. All of this is happening right behind Saima's back. And Saima, God bless her heart, was working many hours in the week in order to, provide for her family. She was trying to make a savings so she could eventually move out of the family household. As you could imagine now, Sabah became more resentful towards Saima, and the pair don't really interact with each other anymore. So the best friend-sister relationship that they had was beginning to become more sour, more colder, and they don't speak as much as they did. Saima did feel resentment and animosity coming from Sabah, but she just couldn't put her finger on it. So she just left it. She didn't really ask Sabah what was going on with her. She just decided to be like, okay, if Sabah has a problem with me, she can come and we can talk about it. If not, I'm not going to instigate anything. But that is totally my assumption. But I couldn't find anywhere where Saima tried to mend their relationship. I think she would have done that, but that is just totally my assumption. So the tension between Sabah and Saima grew and grew over time. And Saima knew something was off, but she couldn't put her finger on it. So as everybody is living under one roof, Sabah would witness Hafiz showing love and affection to Saima, and she'll be watching their family grow. Saima was pregnant a few times, and up until this point she has 3 children with Hafiz, and Sabah was babysitting for her most of the time. I think Sabah stopped working at one point so she could stay close to Hafiz. I know, it's very intense. Sabah was watching Hafiz in the house. She was following him around, and the tension between them two was beginning to grow. And Hafiz at one point was rejecting Sabah, and he was distancing himself from her. Sabah's behavior was getting quite strange, and she was becoming more and more desperate, and she just wouldn't take no for an answer, because Hafiz didn't really end it with her. He was just giving her the cold shoulder. And this is where Sabah was getting very confused, and she was trying to give him more, and she was just putting herself in a position to win his affection. Sabah now sees Saima as her rival. Sabah wanted everything Saima has. Sabah wanted Saima's husband, she wanted her children, she wanted her older sister's life. Sabah wanted Saima's life. That's as simple as I could put it. She was obsessed with her family dynamic, and that's what she wanted all to herself. And at this point she isn't thinking rationally, and it just gets worse from here. Hafiz could feel the desperation coming from Sabah, so he decided to go to a Muslim priest, a imam, and asked him whether or not he could obtain 2 wives. And the imam was quite shocked by this arrangement. So the imam simply said, this goes against Islamic law. You cannot marry your wife's sister. That is not going to work. His request was denied. So what does Hafiz do? Well, he continues the illicit affair. He is still sleeping with Sabah in odd areas in the house. Everything is still happening behind Saima's back, and she still didn't catch on what they were doing. They really covered their tracks, they really did, up until Sabah gets pregnant. Yes, because of this affair, Sabah falls pregnant. Hafiz gets freaked out by this news, and he persuades Sabah to get an abortion, which she promptly does. Nobody found out about the abortion, about the pregnancy, about the affair, none of that. This is where Sabah began to lose her mind even more. So Sabah falls into a deep depression and she took the abortion very hard. She was regretting her decision. Sabah, all she ever wanted was a family with Hafiz, and she wanted to find ways to get rid of her sister. But what does Hafiz do during the time where Sabah needed emotional support? He blocks her on WhatsApp. He completely ignores her, and he is working all hours of the day and night to avoid Sabah. As Sabah grew with frustration, she starts Googling the most bizarre things. And let me tell you what she Googled. Sabah Googled how to get away with murder. She also Googled how to hire a hitman for £200. The third thing she Googled was very strange. She sent £5,000 to a person in Pakistan that practices black magic. And she emailed this person saying, I want you to place a curse on my sister so Sabah can live her life free with Hafiz. So she was talking about herself in the third person in order to get rid of all evidence leading back to, her trying to kill her sister and so on. Sabah's intentions were to place a curse on Saima, which didn't work. And as soon as the black magic person, the wizard, whatever you want to call it, got the money, they simply stopped replying back to Sabah. She got scammed out of her whole life savings. That was her life savings that she was working for. She spent every penny she had to get rid of her sister, and that's how deluded she is at this point, because she was all consumed by this Hafiz person. She didn't want anyone else. She just wanted him, and she loved him and she didn't love anyone else. At this point, Sabah is not thinking straight, so she's thinking, let's go back to the drawing board. And she reminded herself, I want everything Saima has. Her husband, her children, her life, everything. So what did she decide to do? She's going to take matters into her own hands. This is where Sabah reached breaking point, is when Saima got pregnant for the 4th time and she gave birth to her 4th child. Sabah is watching everything unfold, and then Hafiz makes an announcement saying that me and the family, which is Saima and the 4 children, are going to move outside of the house and live elsewhere. Sabah completely panicked and knew this is going to be the last time she will see Hafiz in a close proximity. So she had to execute her plan as quickly as possible, and that's what she decides to do, unfortunately. So Sabah was all consumed by Hafiz, and Hafiz was simply trying to make a run for it. Hafiz was just trying to get away from Sabah because the affair lasted too long and he was showing signs of regret. He regretted having the affair, he regretted ever sleeping with Sabah, but he didn't tell a soul. He just wanted to save his own skin and make a run for it. Sabah's behavior became more erratic. Sabah decided to eavesdrop on Hafiz and Saima outside their bedroom door. She would follow them down the hallway. She would always be sitting with them, and she would also insert herself in their conversations. She wanted to make sure that Hafiz would not forget about her and move on. That was her worst fear, just watching him slip away. She wasn't going to let that happen. So this leads us to the tragic events of today's case. Sabah put Saima's children to bed while Saima's at work. Saima usually works late up until midnight, and Sabah goes downstairs. Nobody's home. She turns off all the lights and texts Saima, telling her that her youngest daughter, a 1-year-old girl, has a fever and Saima needs to come home. So Saima, completely frantic and worried, hurries back home. She walks into the house, and before she could turn around, Sabah just sprints out of nowhere, comes out of nowhere, and starts stabbing Saima 68 times, to the point that Saima's hand was almost severed, and her head was almost severed too. It was a horrific scene. Saima's head was almost severed off. It was a frenzied attack. It was a crime of passion. Sabah stabbed Saima for 10 minutes straight. Sabah was very sloppy with her plan because she bought a kitchen knife from a local Tesco's hours prior to the murder. So after she sees Saima on the floor, completely dead, lying in a pool of her own blood, Sabah runs to the back door where the garden is, and she just punches through the window, pretending that somebody broke in. Nobody broke in, but she wanted to stage a robbery. She shortly afterwards calls the police and tells the police that she was upstairs and she could hear Saima walk into the house, followed by a loud bang and then Saima screaming. Sabah ran downstairs to see what happened, and she found her sister completely dead and unresponsive, lying in her own pool of blood. So that's the story that she wanted to go with, and it seemed very unbelievable because the intelligence team got involved and surveillanced outside of the house, and they were checking all the CCTV footage outside of the home as well, and they couldn't find any so-and-so robber, burglary person coming from the back of the house and attacking Saima. There was no evidence of that. It was all a lie, and Sabah was eventually arrested and her phone was confiscated. So what was inside Sabah's phone? When Sabah's phone was confiscated, the police also found the weird web searches she was making, literally proving that she is so guilty and she was behind her own sister's murder. She really broke down during interrogation. She cracked like an egg and admitted to murdering her sister, Saima. Saima was only 34 years old and she had her whole life ahead of her. Saima was a wonderful human being. She was a mother, she was someone's sister, someone's friend, someone's something. And it's so sad that her sister became more obsessed and Hafiz didn't, come forward with the affair because he's a selfish person and he was just saving his own skin. So back to Sabah. She is jailed for a minimum of 22 years to life. She is serving a whole life tariff and she's never coming out. With Hafiz, however, he hasn't been charged with anything and he's still walking out there as a free man. He made a touching statement saying that he regrets the affair that he has done to his family and he is forever sorry about what has happened, and I hope the kids are doing well. I really do, but he faced no responsibility. I feel like he should have faced some sort of responsibility, but at the end of the day, like I've mentioned earlier, what they did was immoral, not illegal. Like I said earlier, this is a crime of passion. It has it all. Lies, sex, jealousy, obsession, and it's just so scary when families turn against each other to this way. Like, it is unfathomable. It's something I could never understand. It was an open and shut case because of the overwhelming evidence. So with that said, please let me know your thoughts down below. Till then, stay safe, stay hydrated, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.